Hello, everybody. Welcome to your very favorite Bronze Age Spider-Man podcast. Here comes the Spider-Cast. I am your co-host, Mike L, and as always, I'm joined by
Joshua Mervell. And today we're going to be taking a look at number 17 in the Marvel graphic novel lineup, featuring Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, and Captain America.
That's right. And as usual, we have a couple of guest hosts with us. First up, G.I. Jolie.
Your girl.
Excuse
and
me.
Second up is Bex Luthor.
Hey, it's me. I'm here. What's going on?
All right, don't get too excited, everybody, but we are reviewing a 80-page graphic novel this week. I picked this one, obviously, because Spider-Man has a very small appearance in it. For those that don't know, now, obviously, today, a lot of people think graphic novels are like the kind of cool, pretentious word for people that are too embarrassed to be reading comic books. But back in the 80s, it was like a new name invented by Will Eisner, but we'll talk about that in a minute. And to capitalize on the market, Marvel decided, well, we're going to flood the market with a piece of shit story every month featuring either the X-Men or Spider-Man. But to give you a back history of exactly what graphic novels are, G.I. Jolie has done some research, right, G.I. Jolie?
And if I mean, I Googled it, and yes.
All right.
Okay, so, they made this, I guess, at the time, it was the 1970s, late 70s, 1979. Someone in Marvel thought it'd be a great idea because, to launch a whole new line of books, and the title of it is literally Marvel Graphic Novel. Like, that's the line.
Right.
Like was previously mentioned, Jim Shooter at the time was the editor-in-chief at Marvel, and they wanted to create books that were the format of what they called European album, which is like a cardboard cover with full color, more like a magazine. It had like sort of like it's quoted from a Comics Journal interview, but they refer to it as slick page, which is what I'm taking to mean as magazine.
Kind of, yeah, thick and coated, and pure white.
So they wanted to have something that was a bigger format. So it wasn't released in your traditional comic book format. This was 8.5 by 11, so legal or A4. And I didn't read much about the reception. I don't know what the reception was. It sold relatively well, well enough that they allowed creators to. It was like a mix of author-owned and company-owned titles that were released under this Marvel graphic novel line, and notably, the most successful being the New Mutants. They list a bunch of other books, but none that I'm super familiar with. Like Dreadstar, a little bit, but Void Indigo, Starstruck, the Swords of the Swashbucklers, not really. Star Slammers kind of sounds like a 70s Pogs game. Like it's not very the Futurians. I'm not sure. A lot of these properties got sold out to other comic book companies and created series out of them. But yeah, it was more an offering that was, they wanted to offer something different, and they were so serious about it that they actually they hired somebody from Scholastic to create contracts for the writers and artists that they had coming.
Well, one thing I also know is the indie comics were exploding at the time, and I think Marvel was worried about losing some of their creators to the indie publishers, and so they created. I know that they also created Epic Illustrated. I'm not sure if it was exactly before or right after or around the same time, and that was again launched by, I believe it was Jim Starlin with Dreadstar, where they let their most popular creators do their own books that they owned. And as you said, they didn't actually sell these to other creators. They just let them keep them because, for example, Futurians was Dave Cockrum, and Void Indigo, I believe, was Steve Englehart, but I could be wrong. And once Marvel was done with them, they could take those books anywhere, whether it be, Pacific Comics or First Comics or later on Image Comics. And and just for the record, there are some good books in this line. Like the first one was The Death of Captain Marvel, a classic by Jim Starlin. There was the New Mutants one you mentioned by Chris Claremont and Bob McLeod, and then there's Dreadstar. And then there's a bunch of ones, like some that we've heard of, like Dreadstar, Star Slammers by Walt Simonson, things like that. There's Dazzler the movie, which I hope we can review one day. And then there's just books that just came in, like Murata, the She-Wolf. Never heard of it,
Raven Banner, A Tale of Asgard.
So that's tied in, yeah. And then there's look at this, A Sailor's Story by Sam Glanzman. I've never ever heard of this. So, you got to at least give Marvel props for trying. This is kind of like pre-Vertigo, right? So DC later had Vertigo, but this was Marvel's thing. They were letting creators own their own stuff. And it was cool because you'd mix it in. So one month you'd have Cloak and Dagger, and then the next month you'd have The Shadow, Hitler's astrologer. What's that?
It's like the next month you'd have The Shadow of Hitler's astrologer.
Right, yeah.
I was going to say Greenberg the Vampire, but...
Well, there you go, yeah. Or Axe by Ernie Colan, whatever. So anyway, so this graphic novel we're about to review is number 17. So again, like I said, Marvel was flooding the market. Because, again, they basically thought, okay, so indie creators and publishers have got this gimmick that's working that people are buying. So we're just going to wipe them out by taking comics that barely deserve to be 22-page stories, and we're going to pack them with 80 pages of story, and we're going to use the exact same creators who are doing our regular books. We're not going to get anyone special for the most part. And thus you have Marvel graphic novel number 17, Revenge of the Living Monolith. So just for the record, I don't want to be down on these creators, but David Michelinie, who's been writing various issues of Web of Spider-Man, he did The Mystery of the Smithville Thunderbolt. We all know David Michelinie. He did the famous Iron Man Demon in a Bottle story. He went on to do Spider-Man with Todd McFarlane. So I'm not saying he's a bad writer, but he's a standard, typical Marvel writer, right? He's just sort of one of the guys they had around doing the monthly books. We have Marc Silvestri, who went on to do X-Men, who ended up becoming a co-founder of Image. And then we have Geof Isherwood, whose art we just enjoyed in The Mystery of the Smithville Thunderbolt. So, this is not quite Marvel's A-team, but we're okay. And now here's the thing too. I thought I knew who the Living Monolith was. I really didn't. I don't know anything about this character other than he used to be a bad guy called the Pharaoh, I think. But that doesn't matter. Yeah, the Living Pharaoh. There you go. So we're going to try and go through the story as best we can. I'll start it off. So basically, we opened this story in Egypt with a bunch of Caucasian kids dressed up in like baggy clothes, playing around. They get bullied by some kids. Then we watch the kid who got bullied grow up, go to college, fall in love. And then he... And we actually tie it into the ongoing, storyline in X-Men with, the hatred of mutants and all that stuff. And then basically, him and his girlfriend get into a car accident, and then
his wife at this point, who as a kid, they have a kid together too.
So they get into I didn't want to laugh. I'm sorry, but they get into a car accident, and the car flips over, and the baby. I'm sorry, it's not funny, but like the baby's just laying there, like in its blanket on the ground, and like wah, gulp wah, and then he looks over and he sees like the car with his wife in it, and he's trying to help, but everyone refuses to help because of his views on mutants, right? And so then he has to watch the car explode and his wife die, and now he's all angry, so he's gonna get revenge on everyone, and so he uses his mutant powers to shoot a laser at them and hurt or maim a bunch of them, and then the rest of them run away. And then once that happens, he's all like, swearing revenge or whatever. And then behind him, this guy comes up and he's like, you're
much more than you think.
Yeah, you're much more than you think. Come and I will show you your destiny, master.
Yeah.
And then, well, Josh, do you want to take over the next little bit then?
Yeah, we kind of get a little bit of we are caught up to where he is in present day, where he is this kind of a little bit more of a well-known villain fighting the X-Men, and he's kind of got this like little empire that he's building, and then it like hard cuts to present day, and he's in a jail cell, and this was all just kind of a dream. His arms are like bound in these like cuffs, so he can't use his powers. And we find out that the little kid that was bullying him at the start of the story is now his like guard at the prison, and he is kind of like teasing him about how he's in there and he'll never be anything. He's the same kid as he was before. This angers him and he breaks out. And just as he breaks out, he blasts a hole into the ceiling, and all of his followers jump through, and they plan this like prison breakout. And when all this is going down, that guard, his former bully or current bully, I guess if you're looking at it like that, he is like trapped in a wall. Like he's been blasted, and he's been like pushed through like partway through the wall, and it's like crumbled around him, and they decide to cut out part of the wall and take him with them. And this is kind of where our story picks up. We see an Egyptian woman going to New York for the first time, and she goes to the Baxter building, and she's on some sort of secret mission that we don't know about, and a bunch of those goons show up and try to stop her. That's when Human Torch comes in, saves the day. They go up to the Baxter building, and he calls Sue and Reed from, where are they? Philly or something like that? They're out of town doing something.
Chicago, maybe?
Yeah. Connecticut. So they're called back in because something weird is going on, and this woman needs help. It turns out that the Monolith, he's trying to build this machine that will give him like ultimate power and be able to control everybody's brainwaves, or so that's what she says. She says that she wants She-Hulk's She-Hulk is like a bodyguard to kind of protect her, while the Fantastic Four go and try to stop them. We kind of like cut back and forth. He's kind of like talking about his evil plan. There's some like Nazi imagery with all of his followers there as he like salutes, and they all salute back. And they kind of like start their evil plan. It turns out that the woman that came to New York, it was kind of her plan to trick She-Hulk into separating from the Fantastic Four, because Monolith wants the Fantastic Four for some unknown reason. So the ships show up and they triangulate on a position, and it creates this pyramid which teleports them to Egypt, and or maybe into their ship, something like. I think they're all in New York at this point.
Wait,
they go to Egypt.
Oh, they do go to Egypt. Yeah, it's so very confusing. It's very like there's no point for them to be transporting back and forth, because they end up back in Egypt, or they end up back in New York anyways. Mm-hmm. Anyways,
not to the end though. They're like in Egypt for a while.
Well, okay, Josh, do you want to pass it over to Becca?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, Becca, you can take it from here.
Okay, so like the Fantastic Four, they transport them to his the Living Pharaoh's cult, basically his base in Egypt, because it turns out he needs their abilities from their abilities they got from the cosmic power, and he needs that cosmic power to grow stronger. And then we go back to the Baxter building, and this woman hilariously tries to escape She-Hulk. She's like, now that my plan's done, haha, through the window, but turns out not real glass, so she just like tunks a chair at it, and She-Hulk's like pissed off about it now. And then the Fantastic Four are fighting all of the living Pharaoh's goons, and eventually they get captured by a giant tank, I think it is. I don't know. It's very strange how they get defeated. Like he holds up like an Ankh symbol, and then they pass out.
Yeah.
Then they get put into these clear sarcophaguses because everything has to be Egypt themed. And Nothing can be out of the aesthetic, okay? That's very important. So then we pan back over, and some of his goons are like, oh, we have to kill this woman because she got captured, because they alluded to that at the beginning. Any of the goons that get left behind get killed by the living pharaoh because he doesn't want anyone to get interrogated or anything like that. So the goons are like, oh, we gotta kill this woman because she's been captured or whatever, so we can't trust her. And so it turns out that she is the daughter of the living pharaoh, and he's like, oh, I can't kill my daughter, but he can, so he does. Because the
bully bullies him.
He's like, oh, you're such a wuss, you wouldn't kill your daughter, what a pussy. And he's like, watch me. And then he just disintegrates her. Like, the only humanity he had left, he disintegrates her, and then immediately blames everybody else, as one does. And She-Hulk is like right there watching this woman get disintegrated. Pretty wild. So then he grows into the living monolith now from the living pharaoh, which means he just becomes bigger. And he's decided to take his revenge on New York because it was the Fantastic Four that killed his daughter, which I don't think that's how that happened. But all right, dude. So he's like, I'll have my revenge on the city that made me. He's like, why don't you just kill the cop that you have? But whatever. So She-Hulk contacts the Avengers, and the other one whose home is Captain America. So she's like, hey, Steve, need your help. I got some science shit I don't really understand. And Steve's like, well, I don't really understand. Who do we know that knows science? And then apparently Spider-Man is the only person that they know who can help them figure this out.
Strangely, he had to use the supercomputer to clickety-clack.
Right, I love that.
Is the only person.
They're like, put in the keywords of searching our database of superheroes. Who's smart and cool.
And the thing is, they're trying to figure out where the base is, right? Yeah. They're trying to like figure out the teleportation so they can go save the Fantastic Four. And it turns out that they just go back to New York. So him finding out all that, like doing all that science stuff ended up being for nothing because they ended up going back to New York.
Yeah.
Right? Like the monolith came here.
So
I don't know. I don't remember.
They're like, oh, we need Spider-Man for some reason. So they're like, how do we find Spider-Man? I know, we'll go to the Daily Bugle because Peter Parker takes tons of pictures of Spider-Man. He'll know where Spider-Man is. Still, nobody is any the wiser about Peter Parker's secret identity. So Captain America goes to the Daily Bugle, runs into Spider-Man. Spider-Man does some science shenanigans. And then it turns out that the living monolith took a plane to the United States, like just like a 747, with all of his goons, and then they start their rampage on New York. And then we're fighting, and then Spider-Man is decided that this is too much. Like this is his point of no return. That this is too much, and he's like, oh, I don't want to be a coward though. I gotta go do something useful. So he decides to go back to the building, do more science stuff, and figure out where the Fantastic Four was and bring them back. Meanwhile, the whole time, She-Hulk and Captain America are fighting the living monolith. Mm-hmm. And eventually they electrocute him. That's what happens, right? Oh, no, Captain America has like a sit-down Captain America chat with him about like what it means to be good or evil and how people aren't born evil and, typical Captain America words of wisdom. And then the government shoots him.
Wait. Jolie, do you want to pick it up? There's only, 9 pages left. Do you want to do the ending?
Oh, God. No, but I will. So, I'm not even sure where we left off. Was Steve Captain America-ing?
Yeah.
Let's see. Okay, so we've passed the part where Peter somehow is able to magic himself to Egypt.
Science himself.
Yeah, he scienced right there and was able to subdue all of his henchmen with webbing, even though he was unable to unable to sort of slow down the living monolith. Which, I mean, I get it, it's discouraging, but whatever. But he finds out because he's like, okay, well, I gotta stop this and I gotta free the Fantastic Four. But if one of his henchmen, who is in full Egyptian attire with a science lab coat over top.
Yeah, he's the scientist.
What?
An Egyptian scientist, you know.
He's an Egyptian scientist, so obviously. He tells Spider-Man, you can eat, if you destroy this machine, it doesn't just destroy us, it destroys the city of Cairo, which we are currently under. So you can either destroy the machine and destroy us and the Fantastic Four, or not destroy us, but it'll by not destroying us, you'll allow the monolith to continue to grow stronger and thus destroying Manhattan and potentially the rest of New York, maybe just upstate. I don't know. So it kind of cuts from there. We go back to the monolith. This is where Steven thinks that he like climbs up like a small ant to his face so they can see eye to eye. And he tells him, but for every one of them, there are dozens of decent, caring citizens. And like, the guy is like, you know what? Maybe you're right. And he sits down on the rubble of a building. And there's like this panel, which is hilarious, where you sort of see the US military sneaking up behind the monolith. And the monolith is sitting with his like hands on his knees. And Steve is on top of a building talking to him. He's like,
you know, son.
It's great.
Adorable. And then, because the next panel is it's the same thing, but from, because we're going now over Steve's shoulder and we can see the living monolith, and he's so sad. He's just so hurt. He really just is sad about his, like, losing his family. But in true US military fashion, they just barge right in there, guns ablazing, and they shoot at him, thinking that this is going to stop him, which angers him in like a very Godzilla kind of way. And Steve is like, you idiots. I almost had him talked off of this. And the monolith is like, there was like no coming back from that for him. And She-Hulk re-enters the fight. And she gets called names, like super misogynist names, by the monolith, and I don't know what she does. She just grabs his foot. But she does make light of the fact that there's like, she's like, should this be happening? Should we call off the Air Force? There's like civilians. So Steve, he says, I assume that this area, so we should get out of here too, and that's it. The U.S. military calls in like F-14s, like drop bombs on him, drop bombs in Manhattan. They think that they've got him. Like once the dust settles, because you can't really see too clearly, but the dust settles and it looks like, and the monolith kind of like has actually grown bigger. And he continues to grow bigger and bigger and bigger in like, you know that sequence in Power Rangers where Rita Repulsa gets real big?
Mm-hmm.
In that way, where he's just stepping on commuter trains and ending lives. They don't understand what's happening. Here's the thing is that he exposes Con Ed, which is the power company. I had to Google that a second time because I knew I'd seen it before, and I was like, is that like S.H.I.E.L.D. or Sword? No, it's just like an electrical company in Con Ed. So it's no secret. So he, in all of his gigantic being stomping, he exposes this electrical, like the electrical infrastructure, which Captain America tells the power company. He calls them on his cell phone, like his gigantic Zach Morris cell phone that he was keeping in his unitard.
He takes it from a military guy.
Oh,
he's like, kid, give me your phone. I gotta call my buddies at the power company.
Got it. So it's like, so it's a satellite phone. Okay, that makes sense.
It's a walkie-talkie, yeah.
So
to the power company.
He's like, turn off the power, and I'll tell you when to turn it back on. So he tells Jennifer, She-Hulk,
Yes.
who grabs the cable, which admittedly looks small when it was pictured before, but when you see her, it's like the trunk of a freaking tree.
Mm-hmm.
So she's got it, and what she does is she holds it up against Cap. Distracts him again, trying to like play to his humanity. He distracts him enough, the living monolith, I should say, that She-Hulk is able to run up to his ankle and kind of like put the exposed wire on his ankle. And then Cap is like, okay, throw the switch. And they throw the switch and they, quote, electrocute. Which causes him to fall and trample, like fall, because he's so huge. It looks like he tramples up because you see them running towards something. Mm-hmm. Everyone cheers because they think he's dead. And then Spider-Man flies in the just at the 11th hour with the Fantastic Four, who he's freed. We find out later that they're, what is it? Spider-Man had the idea to just ramp up the juice to max, which would cause the monolith to grow bigger, but would short out. In his mind, he was like, well, it'll create a short and it'll stop juicing him. And then that way, I can free the Fantastic Four from their sarcophagi. And like once everything shorts out, which is smart, but doesn't actually work. Because a few panels later, we see that the monolith, though he doesn't get up, is still alive. And he's still sentient. Oh my god. What I don't
So
they call the Avengers after previously stating that we don't have time to call the Avengers.
The Avengers show up after everything's done, but then it turns out that all of his goons, they show up in their like futuristic Egyptian spaceships and they start kind of attacking all of New York. So now the Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, and the Avengers, they all team up to kind of fight these guys. And in a last ditch effort, Captain America continues to like talk to him and convinces him that what he's doing is bad and he's hurting a lot of people. So he tells Thor to tie a rope around him and then Mjolnir and throw Mjolnir up into space, which like catapults the monolith like light years away from Earth, and he at the end starts turning into a living planet.
Yeah, because he's expanding.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, he's expanding. Then it's like, and no longer is he the living pharaoh. No longer the living monolith. Now and never ending, he is Ahmed Abdul, the living planet. The end.
Yeah. So.
So this is the longest Marvel team up I've ever read.
Okay, I thought it was fun. I actually had fun reading it. Is it a good story? No. No.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff in it that just doesn't work. But it's so fun every single step of the way. Like, I'm totally here for the cornball, cheesy story. I like that they gave time to set up the main villain and like make him a little bit relatable, or at least attempt to do that. He wasn't just like some mustache twirling bad guy. He had a little bit of depth to him. Sometimes like the logic of everything is a little weird and arbitrary, like trying to figure out how to get to Egypt only for a monolith to show up there, and then Spider-Man ends up needing that thing to go back to Egypt. And then like it's all very strange, and sometimes things just happen. Even like his whole daughter thing too, like I think it's a really great idea and a fun setup, but it was executed in a really strange way. Like he's still hung up about his high school bully that he killed his own daughter. because the bully bullied him into doing it. Like, it just doesn't really make sense. Like, and they even set up that he like hid his daughter away from the world and like gave her away, so he doesn't even know who his daughter is. So like he could have went there and killed her, not knowing it was his daughter, and then that would give Captain America a reason to believe that there's like some humanity left in him, like he didn't know, and like that could be the thing that he's reasoning with him about, and like making him feel bad about that, and you know, making him kind of come like throwing the monster away and becoming human again. And that's when the military creeps up on him. But it just seemed kind of lazy in parts for it being an 80-page story. For what we got, it could have just been like 2 issues, maybe.
Well, yeah, I think it's clear that this
like,
there wasn't enough story for 80 pages, and they just stretched it out. But they didn't take advantage of the space to do anything grand other than the spectacle of, because they say in like the notes at the beginning that they wanted to recreate like a 1950s monster movie, but
Godzilla,
like that. Maybe in 1985 that was a novelty, but that has been done to death so many times. I just don't care anymore, you know. So I mean. We could talk about other things, but that's my main issue with it, is this does not justify like the graphic novel format. Becca, what do you think?
Nah, I had a great time.
Okay.
No, it's how long is it? You said 80 pages? 60 pages?
80, yeah.
80.
Yeah, it's probably 50 pages too long.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, he kills his own daughter because a guy's calling him a wimp. Kill that guy.
Yeah.
Like, why does this, like... And then this guy's got balls, though. He's, like, goading this guy who he knows has powers in a prison cell, gets captured by him, gets threatened by him, and still goads him. He's like, oh, what are you, little pussy, crying about your daughter? Meh. Like, dude. Like, way to take the bully format, and that's your identity. You're like, I'm going to be a bully for the rest of my life. Which, pretty accurate to how policing goes. So, you know what? I'm here for that. Anything that has She-Hulk in it is great. I like it when they make sure to draw her super jacked, because she better be. I don't know. It could have just been a Fantastic Four story, right? Like, nobody else needed to be in here.
True.
No.
Yeah,
the whole... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Spider-Man was in here for a very strange reason.
At least they tried to give him a reason to be there, but...
But it could have just been like, he looked out his window and he's like, whoa, crap, giant monster man, better go help. Like, that would make more sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, like, he destroys the World Trade Center. You don't think Spider-Man would have seen that and just jumped in the fight? Like, what about literally every single other, you know, person in Marvel Comics at the time?
It's
just... like, where's Doctor Strange?
Yeah, the excuses for the people not being here. Like, they, like, excused the Avengers. Steve's like, oh, we don't have time to call the rest of them. They're
on vacation.
Like, what do you mean? And then they when they do call them, it specifically says that it only takes him a couple minutes to get there.
Yeah. And Iron Man shows up with the rope, like, draped around his arm.
I figured we'd need this.
Gigantic rope that will become a eventual, what do they call it? A thong slingshot?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
So, I love, where's the panel when the Avengers show up? Oh yeah, the Avengers show up in their giant ship, and you got Thor, you got Iron Man, and then freaking Hawkeye's there. It's like, oh, thank God. You know. Wonder Man, sure, you know what, pretty strong guy. Star Fox, fuck Star Fox. But then they're like, don't worry, Hawkeye's here. Like, come on.
I think we only ever see him in like one other panel too, like shooting an arrow.
Right.
Yeah, and he's
helping.
He's just being shady.
So, Julie, do you think this justifies the 80 pages?
Actually, yeah.
I think everyone else liked it more than me then, but anyway.
I was thinking about it, and mainly I was thinking about Marvel Team Up. And I was like, you know what? This is Marvel Team Up. If Marvel Team Up was 80 pages, it allows
And good.
and better. Not maybe not good, but definitely
Okay, fair.
better.
Not terrible.
Right? So this is exactly what Marvel Team Up needs. Is room to breathe.
Mm-hmm.
A room to allow all of the characters to like just not be literally sitting on top of each other as they're introduced. It was nice. I liked having, aside from the obvious Orientalism and weird bigotry, when it came to like the quote terrorism plot, the backstory that we don't get in those Marvel team ups, or the backstory that we do get that's one page of flashbacks, we got in like the first 8 pages here, and it was interesting. It was actually really interesting.
And it had something to do with the actual story too, which was nice.
Exactly. And it made you sympathize with Ahmet a little more. So that when it came down to him and Steve having a chat about what he was doing, he wasn't just a monster. And you could potentially see him sort of rehabilitating. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It is a possibility rather than just like a shoehorned device.
Okay, well, here's the thing. Let me just say, I think one of the reasons I didn't like it maybe as much as you guys is because even though I think Marc Silvestri is a great artist, I thought the art was really sloppy, and I can only assume it's because of Geof Isherwood, whom we all know from the mystery of the Smithville Thunderbolt, doing art. So, again, I'm looking at this book and I'm thinking in 1985 I would have paid, what is this, $12.50? That's like $1,000 now, you know? And it's like, I open this up and first of all, the coloring I thought was kind of bad. Like,
it looks like marker.
Yeah.
I was gonna say that it looks like alcohol markers.
Yeah.
Maybe it is, right? I don't know, but
I mean,
yeah.
If you're saving time, yeah.
I don't know. I didn't hate it, but it just seemed like really sloppy considering how expensive it was, how nice the paper was, all the size of the paper. Like, they didn't take advantage of any of those things. It just seemed like a regular story. Obviously, I don't dislike these creators because I like them in other things. It's just that I don't think this book deserved this format. I
thought that the art was pretty good at times. I liked a lot of the facial expressions. Actually, I think I might have said the exact same thing with the story with the Smithville Thunderbolt.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think it is definitely sloppy at times. There's no denying that. But when time is taken to really focus on some of the characters, some of the poses, and the facial expressions, it becomes fantastic.
Right.
I really love a lot of like the comedic moments too with the facial expressions, like when Cap visits J. Jonah Jameson and he's all like geeked that he's meeting his hero Captain America, and he's like, "Hey, I'm actually here for Peter Parker," and he like that like face that he makes, that like defeated like Parker. It's so good. Mm-hmm. It's both like a very very well done, well executed, funny face. It also like encapsulates.
Yeah.
Encapsulates?
Yes, that word. Like everything about JJ. Like it's just, it works perfectly for his character.
Right.
Yeah.
So at times I think the art is very well done in this issue.
Yeah. I didn't think that it was the tightest of stories. There were definitely some things that for example, I was trying to flip back to that image of Cap going to the bugle. One, I loved that scene. But sorry. So like back to my original point. But there are things that like an editor might have said, "Hey, take another look at that." The Pharaoh cult having guns. And then, okay, so I think it's Digital 18 when Feya is trying to get into the Baxter building. There's a bunch of the cult members just standing casually in front of the Baxter building, semi-automatic.
America.
Just in the middle of Manhattan, a no open carry state. And there's a man and a boy who are like, this is none of our business. Let's move. And
the kid's like, oh man.
Yeah, the kid's like, oh jeez.
But I wanted to see the murder, Dad.
Right? and then here's the thing though, is that they have guns, which looks ridiculous. Like they're dressed as ancient Egyptians would have dressed, but they're holding modern guns.
Right.
And when it comes down to attacking her, he pulls out a dagger and attacks her instead of shooting at her. Like, it's just weird. Just like those types of like finishes aren't there.
The thing is, the scene with like J. Jonah Jameson, that felt like Spider-Man. I don't want to say Spider-Man the movie, but I think Josh and I talked about this a long time ago when we were reviewing, like, I think it was the Superman Spider-Man Treasury Edition or something like that, where it feels like it's like this is Marvel the movie, where you see all these weird scenes done by different creators that you wouldn't usually see them do, and so it felt like they were having fun with stuff like that. But I think another reason I didn't care so much about the story is I really didn't know who the Living Pharaoh was. I mean, they could have, which doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad story, but I don't know. I mean, even by the end of the story, even though they did give him some character development, the fact that all he ends up doing is just expanding into a living planet, I don't know, just the idea doesn't really do much for me. So
yeah, that's fair. I think that at the beginning, I actually really liked the backstory that they were setting up for him, and it was really working for me. Even up to the point where like his old bully is a police officer, like guarding him at the prison. I love that. And then him, of course, why wouldn't he want to take his high school bully along with him to kind of like prove him wrong and then, you know, finish things off?
Right.
Like that's such a fun, great idea. But then that's where it kind of all falls apart, is when it becomes this big master plan to take over the world, and things just start happening to have emotional beats, like his having to kill his daughter because he's bullied into doing it, and then Cap talking him off the ledge and everything. Is I really loved that scene, and I think that the best stuff in this book is all the Captain America stuff, surprisingly. But it just doesn't work because I don't believe that he would just stop. Like, he just killed his daughter. He's so ruthless.
Right.
So his secrets didn't come out, but he's going to listen to Captain. He's going to sit down in the middle of a rampage to listen to Captain America because he said, "Hey, listen, I got something to say to you." It's like, really? That's when it falls apart for me. And that's when the story doesn't work, and his characterization falls apart too. It's like, why would he just stop? But then, like, when you kind of brush past that scene is so good. Like, that's exactly what Cap would do. He's like trying to reason with him, and then after the military steps in and continues to fight, he kind of loses himself again and starts rampaging, and they come up with the idea to electrocute him. And this is my favorite part of the comic. She-Hulk is ripping up this giant bundle of live wires, and she like cracks a joke about, "Oh, I hope he doesn't splatter when we fry him with these wires." And like Cap like
scolds her.
I'm like, we're about to possibly kill a man. I don't consider that a cause for levity.
Yeah.
Like, it's just very, I don't know. Like, he was the most like real, human and real of this comic. It's just, I guess, a little upsetting that it didn't fit the rest of what was going on, if that makes sense.
Well, if you guys enjoy David Michelinie and Marc Silvestri, they will be taking over Web of Spider-Man at some point in the near future. So we have more to enjoy from those creators.
It's Web of. I don't even care anymore.
So let's
sure, maybe they'll do something with it.
Let's give a quick recommendation. I cannot. I'm sorry, I can't recommend this. I don't, and I never want to read it again. Josh, what about you?
Oh, it's tough. I actually really had a lot of fun reading it. Is it good? Not really like a good story, but there's a lot of fun moments in it. It's super long. So I think it's definitely okay to skip some parts, like when it starts to kind of drag on and it becomes like just a big punching fight. You can kind of skim through those pages, but I think overall I'd recommend it. I had fun reading it.
All right, G.I. Jolie.
I'm with Josh. I had a lot of fun reading it too, and I was surprised at. I was honestly surprised and shocked at how much I enjoyed reading it. I went back and looked through the email to see what was the second book that you had wanted us to read.
Right.
Because initially we were gonna read the 2 graphic novels, but decided for
but fuck that.
Yeah, that it might be too long. But I found myself wanting to read the other one, to see if they were all like this, like kind of weird. But
we'll find out soon because that one's been rescheduled for an upcoming episode.
So yeah, I mean, I like a half recommendation. Like
Right.
I'm not pushing it into your hands, but if I happen to be holding it, I could be handy.
All right, Bex Luthor.
Yeah, no, I'm with Josh and Jolie. I did have a good time reading it. When I was reading it, I found myself, the time flew by. It didn't drag as I was reading it. I was like interested in the story. It kept my interest.
Right.
I think it was Josh that said, like, if instead of him knowing it was his daughter and then killing her, if he killed her and then one of his goons was like, hey, that was your daughter, and like the rest of the story would have made 30 million times more sense.
Right.
Like if they just changed that little part of it, I think it would have been like a full recommendation for me, because then everything would have made sense, and the whole like Captain talking him down back to his humanity would have made sense too. But no, I liked it, and honestly, I would recommend this to anyone who just thinks She-Hulk is hot, because She-Hulk is really hot in this one. And like I'm reading it and I'm like, the whole time I'm like, yeah, I know I'm gay, can we just get to the point? Because every time she's doing some crazy feat of strength and she's the boss, and she's like at the end when she's holding the 2 Storm siblings on her freaking shoulders, I'm just like, okay, yep, I'm gay. And this is the reason why. It's these old She-Hulk comics. No, cut out all the Spider-Man parts, even though that's the reason why we read it, and you're good.
All right.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Well, next week we are back to reading regular Spidey comics, which I'm sure everyone's happy about. We're going to be doing Web of Spider-Man number 10, featuring Dominic Fortune. The Amazing Spider-Man 272 featuring Slide. Spectacular Spider-Man 110 featuring Spidey vs. Daredevil. And Secret Wars 2 number 7. So be sure to join us.
Okay, well, all right.
That's a lot of fun.
So we're getting Secret Wars and a bad guy named The Slide.
That's right. Gonna be a good one, folks. And you can take it from here, Josh. Well, go ahead, Becca. What?
I was just gonna say, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to make it next week. Like I said previously, I'm gonna be dead. So
there's no escape.
But it's always a week away, anyway.
Okay. Anyways, we want to thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast. It really helps when you leave us a review over on Apple Podcast, or you can drop us a line on Twitter at HCT Spidercast. Please let us know what you guys think about the comics and the podcast itself. We definitely want to keep that comics conversation going.
So until next Monday,
Spider friends,
bye-bye.
Go for it!